that a lot of times our beliefs and our thinking, our guilt, our assumptions cause us to agree with unproductive ideas. We have choices. We can choose the things that we want, and we in that choosing we get the fruit of that choice too. But just because we make a choice and we might have the fruit of that choice, it doesn't mean we have to keep choosing that, right? We can change those things if and when we want to. A key to doing that, though, is to acknowledge that I did the choosing, I did the creating, nothing outside of me did it. So if I did it, I can redo it.
Right. And you can have the fruit of the new choice.
Yes. Yes. And the funny thing, if I keep choosing the old choice, that means I keep choosing the fruit of that choice too.
Hey, everyone. Let's start healing. I'm Adrienne Murchison, and welcome to episode 144 of the Let's Start Healing podcast. We have more in common than we think, and what we have in common can change the world. I have a very rich conversation today with the author of an upcoming novel titled A Most Useful Betrothal. And her name is Netta Fei. She is a wonderful writer. She's already won an award for this book. She won the John Lewis Grant Award for Fiction from the Georgia Writers Association. And the book is inspired. Well, first of all, the the story of the book is one inspired from a Bible scripture, and two inspired from her own story. And I'm going to save this for the conversation with Netta Fei, but we really dive into some wonderful areas. And I want to ask you a question. How important is your own happiness to you? How long can you go on in an experience where you're sacrificing your own happiness and what brings you joy? And that is one little area that we talk about in this episode. And that really touches me because from early adulthood, I have always felt like our happiness is so essential. And I think we have a tendency to put that on the back burner, especially for people who are parents and raising a family. And you think, listen, I have all these commitments and obligations, and I come last. And I think that can be very common. And one of the things that would come up for me is one of my loved ones. I remember saying, when I was 18, 19, to one of my loved ones, you get to be happy. And then I would say this throughout life to people who were so important to me and so close to me in my life. Like, you get to be happy. And I wonder if it's really something that can happen with men, although we talk about women a great deal and some of the things that we bring to the table or issues that we may bring to the table in this conversation. I wonder if this is something is that's very prevalent in men, that because of so many commitments, that they feel like, whether they're driven by family or career, that their priorities come last. And so when I say priorities, I mean what really touches them um, the most uh, is at the bottom of the pile. And I think that maybe we're getting to a place right now in our society where we are starting, so many of us are starting to think about, well, what is it that makes me happy? And what is it that doesn't make me happy? And maybe I need to make some changes here. And the fulfillment that can come from that, because we are only here on this planet for a finite period of time. I think it must be pretty hard to be at the end of a life and thinking about what I wish I had have done. That must be pretty hard. So I want to invite you to subscribe to Let's Start Healing wherever you are listening to this podcast, on whatever platform. Please share Let's Start Healing with at least one person that you know. I'm very excited about you meeting Netta Fei. Let's meet her. Let's get started and let's start healing. Welcome, Netta Fei.
Thank you, Adrian. I'm so excited to be with you. I'm so looking forward to this, and I appreciate you inviting me to join
Oh
you.
gosh, thank you so very much. I feel like what Wendy Williams used to say, how like she had like friends in her head that she had never met,
Yeah.
like they were really good friends in her mind. And
Yes.
so the more I read about you, like and I'm getting ahead of myself, but I just want to mention
Okay.
I gotta go look because I took a screenshot uh, of your website and you have on here about you activists for healing through the eternal feminine. I was like, oh
Yes.
my God, I love that. You know,
Ooh, there's so much to say about that. I know we'll get to it whenever you
yes.
want to.
Well, we can get to it now.
Okay.
Let me say that we're going to talk about your book, A Most Useful Betrothal,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
So please speak to this. Activists for healing through the eternal
Activists for,
feminine.
yes, healing through the eternal feminine. And interestingly, with the uh, announcement of the vice president running for president, I'm feeling that more as an opportunity for us to heal with the eternal feminine rising. So the backstory to that is partly with my journey, um, coming through an unproductive marriage and having to do a lot of that. I think I myself got into an imbalance of energy. I see the creator as a full and whole masculine energy, feminine energy. And I think those things are counterparts, a yin and yang, a sun and moon, uh, that type of a scenario, but it's wholeness. And one can't really do without the other in the most healthy way. When either one gets way off balance, then you're in trouble one way or another. And I think the world, and particularly America, and probably people as individuals, are demonstrating the dominance of the masculine that has been groomed for centuries, that has repressed the feminine energy for a lot of different reasons. So hence we see, anger and polarity and competition and a lot of the forceness that's happening in our homes, in our communities, in the nation. And I think a lot of that is because we have not uh, remembered, resurrected, revalued the feminine side of the creator. And it doesn't mean softness, it doesn't mean weakness, but it means wisdom and intuition and patience and compassion and thoughtfulness and silence and thinking before we act, to see others as ourselves. It means a lot of that, but it's amazing power and amazing strength. But we've kind of substituted and given away to the force and the power and the war and the lies and the anger and the vindictiveness and all of that thing that we see as the way to win. So, my saying that I'm an advocate for healing through the feminine is just saying that I want to champion those messages and encourage people to stop and see the wholeness of the creator and start to appreciate that feminine side and how we show up. It's not femininity, it's not feminism, but it's the she of the creator God. or you could argue that, okay, Mother Nature, the things that are happening there, but it's really just that side of the creator and that side of who we are. She's not missing, she's just repressed, she's just hidden, and I think we need to resurrect her.
Oh my gosh, you said so much.
Mm,
You said so much. When you talk about the masculine energy, are you referring to that energy that could be in, or feminine energy, masculine or feminine energy?
hmm
Um, are you referring to the energy that could exist in a man or a woman? Like that, both of those energies can exist in a man or a woman.
exactly. Not only I believe can they exist, they do exist in every living being. I think even in the plant world, that right there's a male and a female counterpart, and for the plants to grow, you need both of them
Yes.
to be working and doing their part. It's a harmonious dance between those two that bring forth life, that brings forth abundance, that bring forth harmony, and really the ultimate power.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Substituting one for the other is not the ultimate power.
right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I think they exist in everybody. We decide which ones show up, how the two show up.
Why do you think the masculine energy, and for the sake of argument for somebody listening, that can exist in a woman or a man is very dominant right now?
Yeah. I think there are a lot of reasons for it. In some ways, survival has led people to lean toward that heavy, hard, by any means necessary, just cut through and do it. And a lot of time it hadn't been for malicious reasoning. For example, our ancestors in America, African Americans who came to this country in the way that they did, had to do a lot of things just for sheer survival, or just to stomach having your children taken away from you at birth. You, a lot of times that brought forth a hard, crusty um, a force just so that you could wake up in the morning.
Yeah,
So in a lot of ways, sheer survival for whatever
yeah,
situation someone might find them in. A mother with 5 kids on her own, being everything to raise the kids. Sometimes she may not felt like she had a moment to sit still.
yes,
She
yeah,
just had to go and push and fight, and the rat race and all of those things get conjured up. So sometimes for those reasons, some of it is for dominance and for people with ulterior motives to dominate other people. So they do that by force, and they do that by manipulation, and by contriving these ideas and conspiracies to rule over someone else.
hmm,
That might come from a place of self-sufficiency, feeling it within themselves that they are weak. So
yeah,
I have to be strong by suppressing you, by knocking you down, by overcoming you and taking your stuff.
right, right, right.
It comes from that place of evil. And I think the third thing is, some people have feared the intuition that comes through that feminine energy. And a lot of times that have been channeled through a female, even though it's not gender specific, right? Males can have these same things, but some people fear that. I can remember my mother talking about her grandmother and the things she could do with nature and healing people, and the way she prayed, and what she did. Some people want that because they want healing, they want success, but they also fear it. Right? It's like the um,
The
attacks of
unknown,
the witches. People
right,
fear the things that they don't know
or
and
can control, or
can't control. They fear, but sometimes it can come through that ultimate intuition that I think we all have if we can allow it. But again, people suppress it because, like you said, they can't control it. They fear it. They don't want things to change, so they just snuff that out.
Yes. And I think about that, what you're talking about, when I think about our ancestors who were enslaved. And in my mind, on one hand, it's what you were describing about the strength that they would have to have. And also in my mind, it is that not the religion that or spirituality that was inflicted on them, but within themselves, they relied on a spirit, a holy spirit, a divine
Mhm.
spirit, God
Right,
within
right,
themselves in order to survive. And
right.
so I believe that everybody has that ability,
Mm-hmm.
but you do see that so much in people of color, I believe, because that's, how we are. That's been passed on and passed on and passed on.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. How in our history, our ancestors and a lot of ancestors of indigenous people connected to the universe, they could read the stars and the moon and the signs, and they could tell when things were about to change, and they allowed that type of um, information and energy to run through them without
Right.
fear.
Right.
They relied on it without fear. They were really connected to nature and the universe and all of creation. But then you get thrown into a situation where all of that is stripped from you. And maybe you're trying to hold on to every little vestige of it, but
Yeah.
to survive, you turn into something else.
Yeah. Yeah. I am so fascinated and joyful about you for so many reasons, and one of them is I'm like, so I'm a very spiritual person. I've been a little different for my whole life,
Yeah.
and I've been, I tap into my intuitive side,
Mm,
and and I think of God is love, period.
yes.
And it's okay if a person doesn't call who I call God. They can call
Right.
God the wall. I don't care.
Yes. Yes.
So, but for Black people, this is to me something that's becoming more accepted. And so I'm thinking about you and how your book is inspired from a Bible scripture,
Hmm.
and just what we're learning about you, just 15 minutes into the conversation or less, like
Hmm.
how did you come about? Where'd you come from? Because this is not how we are traditionally,
True,
yeah.
true, true. And my beginnings are probably similar to a lot of us and my peers. I was raised in a very uh, Christian, Black, Southern Black, Christian committed family, and church was everything. Singing in the choir, on the usher board, BTU. It was just all of that. So I was fed a high fattening diet of Bible. And it was the truth for me for a long time. And it was out of love, it was out of goodness. My parents practiced what they preach. They were like two peas in a pod, the two of them, and it was wonderful. And a lot of the things they taught me, I do carry forth to this day. As I grew up and was doing church things, I started to see that something was a little bit off. The same people were getting delivered every Sunday. When church was over, it's like they reverted back to these unkind people who wouldn't let you into the parking lot, or it was different. And I'm thinking, if we are what we say we are, things should be different.
Mhm.
We A lot of things, and I think the nail on the head was one service. A leader stood up. It was a high praise period time, and one of the leaders stood up and said, "Oh, I see demons all over the place and everything." And I'm thinking, if this is what we say, well, why would they be so comfortable flying around everywhere? So I think something is wrong. And so I know it can't be with the creator.
How
So
old were you at this point?
I was old. I was probably early 40s. And I think internally I was seeking truth. I was seeking something that I did not see. Wasn't quite sure what I was seeking, but I was seeking something. But I was just observing these things, and I even got more involved in the church, thinking, okay, if I'm on this thing, if I'm on this committee, if I'm doing this, then maybe this thing will go away. Because again, a lot of the things that were planted in me early on kept popping up. Oh, if you don't go to church, something bad's gonna happen. Oh, if you don't do, so it's like, you know, where is this coming from? But when she said that, I said, yes, something is wrong. So I said, it's not with the creator. So it has to be with us. So I'm going to unplug and go find out what's wrong with us.
Wow.
I did that. My first thing was investigating the history of the King James Version of the Bible. And that sent me on a long journey of where I am right now. And where I am right now is that I do God, I do Christ consciousness. I will read ancient writings beyond the Bible because I believe all of them are like the mixed tree. There's fruit, there's truth, and there's untruth. There's good and there's evil in all of them. I will read whatever I might be led to look for the truth that resonates within me. But I don't do religion. And having that journey, every time I took a step toward that, I became more free.
Yeah.
I felt the liberation, and I felt what I had been taught to know as Jesus.
Mhm.
I felt that Christ consciousness. I felt that thing more as I was unwinding from, I guess, the dogma of organized religion.
Right. And the beautiful thing about what you're talking about, that journey is it's not something that you have to convince somebody else of, because that truth is in everybody.
Right.
You know, like whatever that journey is, they come to the same truth of that free love,
Yeah. If they want it.
unconditional love.
Ye
Yes.
yes, and I did make that mistake early on because part of this unwinding, I did go through the stages of grief in a sense because I was in shock about how could I not know this or what. So it was a journey of a lot of different things, and I did try to tell people who I loved that things were off, but then I had to repent from that because,
Mhm.
like you said, it wasn't my place to do it. It's not love to do it. And I'm the way I love myself, I'm gonna love them the same way.
And
Find
what does
whatever journey that satiates their soul.
right, right. And
Yeah.
what does repent from that mean? What do you
It
mean?
mean I stopped doing it.
Yeah.
I stopped trying to tell people. If people ask me, I will
Yeah.
answer where I am,
Yeah.
but I will not say, "Oh, this is what I learned. This is what I found out. Oh, this is what
Yeah.
brought me here." No, that like you
Yeah.
just said, that was my journey
Right,
to,
right.
to all love, to all oneness. That's
Yeah.
my journey, and I love myself, which also grew. I learned how to really love and accept me, which meant I could love and accept anyone else whatever they chose to be.
Exactly.
Yeah,
You so
I'm
you can
with
forgive
you.
you can forgive you for whatever you can forgive somebody else in the
Somebody
same
else.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can be happy with where my spiritual connection is now and joyful. I can be happy where they are with theirs,
Right.
whatever they're saying.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're not hurting anybody, but yeah.
Yes. I had, an experience when I was in my 30s. I mean, I feel like I've always been spiritual,
Okay.
although I grew up Catholic.
Okay.
And I had this experience in my 30s where I guess I was going through an awakening where
Mm,
I would all of a sudden, the best word I could describe is I would feel conscious. Like I would
mm,
feel like I was awake and
wow.
God is with me,
Mm.
and I would be like, "Well, what was I doing yesterday? Like, why do I feel like this now?" You know? And then it was like that for a number of days, and then it was
Mm.
like all of a sudden I was asleep again because I wouldn't know I was asleep until I woke up again. And
Okay.
it was so bizarre, and I've brought it up in my spiritual groups, like, I'm trying to understand it because
Mhm.
I feel closer to God, like, in my relationship
Mm.
with God
Mhm.
than ever. As the years go on, I feel like
Mhm.
consistently close,
Mhm.
but I
That
don't
was
know what it
happening
was.
within you. That
Yeah,
awakening and stuff was happening within. Wow.
it was
That's
really strange.
awesome.
It was like some alien would come down in my body, and then all of a sudden I would feel like, "Oh, I'm awake right now," and
Wow.
I didn't, and I would be everything would be about God for me and understanding different things, and then
Mhm.
I don't know when that would stop, and then it would stop because when I would wake up again, I would realize, "Hey, I've been asleep."
Mm.
These are the best words I can
That
use
you could use
to
for it. You could
describe it.
use
Yeah.
for it. Wow, that sounds like an unveiling and
Mhm.
awakening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe the more you allowed it, the more it happened.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So, gosh. Okay, so your book. I wanna get to your book,
Okay.
A Most Useful Betrothal.
Mhm.
And so, well, first of all, it's going to be published in October, right?
Right.
And
Mhm.
you've already won an award for the story of this book and your writing of this book. The John
Right.
Lewis Writing Grant Award.
Mhm.
I have
You're
that
right. The
in front
John Lewis
of me.
writing fiction grant.
So
And
congratulations.
thank you so much. I was so excited. It came from the Georgia Writers Association, and I submitted an excerpt of the book right when the book was starting to go into production. And they selected it as the fiction winner. And I was so thrilled and honored, and it just like boosted me so much. Yeah. And I
And
got
this is your first book.
this is my first novel. Yeah, book
You've
that
written
I've
other.
written. I've done short stories,
Mhm.
but this is, yeah, my first book.
So, I decided that I'm gonna let you describe the story of this book because I have some questions that you may clear up when you
Sure.
tell the story of this book. And actually, first start with the scripture and then how you came to the story.
Yes. So First Samuel 25 and 3. And it is a sentence that says a man, I'm a paraphrase, a man named Nabal had a wise and beautiful wife named Abigail. She was beautiful and wise. He was foolish. And it stopped there. Later, the subsequent passages start to tell more of the story, but that's the one that kind of stuck me. And I knew about it and had read it for a long, long time. And each time it just kept me thinking, and I kept asking, why does it talk about her intelligence and her beauty? And how did she end up married to a fool? It's in a lot of biblical passages will do things like that, throw things out, and it seems like it doesn't add up.
How did I get here?
Yeah, it just so yeah. How did it get here? Why did that happen? Why did you say this about that person? So anyway, the book, A Most Useful Betrothal, it imagines Abigail's story and how she got to First Samuel 25 and 3. She's wise, she's beautiful, but she ends up being married to Nabal, whose name in Hebrew means fool. And scriptures describe him as, harsh. And so this is what it talks about. So it talks about how she gets into her mismatch and how she deals with it, the circumstances of it, and then how she comes out. So some of the fun and challenging the characters include Nabal, the husband, and in the book, I imagine he has other wives. It includes a young man named Mo, who is Nabal's enslaved kind of executive officer, and he befriends Abigail. And it includes David, who I call in the book Dawit, and he's the nation's, champion warrior and all those things. So through her journey in the book, she discovers that true wisdom and beauty is born from within and is seeking always to be free.
Wow.
So that's kind of
Well, okay,
a
let's
quick
go.
synopsis.
Okay, so one, she's 15 because of
Uh-huh.
the
She's
times
15
that
at the
we're in,
time. Mm-hmm.
and she rescues abandoned children. Is that
She
right?
does. She does. Because she later uh, learn. So the people that she knows parents, she is there a daughter by, you would say adoption, but it's no formal adoption during that period. The dad found her on the road when she was 4. So she is one of those throwaway children whom she rescues. And which is an honorable thing, but she does that initially out of anger and self-sacrifice, that those children she see are near death or at a terrible state, but she as one of them didn't end up that way.
Yes.
But she has some guilt in her
Oh,
being rescued. So sometimes she will act really brash and just do irrational things as a result of that guilt,
wow.
until she has a turnabout.
And
And she does it for other reasons. Her course changes a little bit.
for other reasons.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And how did you get to this story? I mean, within you. I mean,
Sure.
that's very deep. Like it really touches me. I don't relate to it through that kind of personal experience, but I
Mm-hmm.
relate to it. And I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of women will
Mm-hmm.
relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so how
Yeah.
did you get to that?
Yeah. So the that one question puzzled me in general. How does a smart, intelligent, beautiful a girl end up married to a fool? And in my story, I imagine these characters as brown people. But it wasn't just Abigail State that did it. For shortly, it became my own. And 20 years into like my own marriage, I kind of accepted the hard truth that my spouse and I were incompatible. So no matter how we presented it to the world, and no matter how good of a relationship magician I tried to be, we were just incompatible. So divorce wasn't an option because I was still in the state of that would harm my relationship with the creator, and that's just not what we did.
Divorce
Regardless,
was
divorce was
the
not an
eyes of the
option
church.
initially. And so I kind of stewed in the situation and pressed on, I would talk to do and try to figure it out. But I had a lot of time in the demise of that my relationship to think back on what happened. How did I, a smart and intelligent girl, get into such an antithetical till death do you part relationship? So, out of that stewing and that thinking, I learned a lot about me, my self view, my limiting and sometimes handed down beliefs that caused me to make a decision or agree with a union like that, and then to muddle through it for 20 years. And some of those things that I found in myself, I attributed or gave to Abigail. that a lot of times our beliefs and our thinking, our guilt, our assumptions cause us to agree with unproductive ideas and unproductive things. And we get yoked to things that are not our equal. We say yes to things that are not where we want to go.
Yeah.
And so we end up that way. So out of this, like Abigail, kind of two truths emerged in my looking back on how I had gotten there. And I'll say this too. Um, I'm not throwing any shade to my spouse. If it was incompatible for me, it was incompatible for him. Yeah. However he acknowledged that or not, it was the same on both sides.
Right. Right. Right.
So two truths that I came out that I also tried to express in the book was that if I did a thing, then I can undo that thing. If I take ownership that I created this thing, then I can recreate something else. And part of this stewing that I was going in my own relationship was happening when I was seeking God, or when I was seeking how am I aligned to the creator God who never changes and can do the things that I'm learning about what, you know, Jesus or the Christ consciousness says about me. So in that, I learned that we have choices. You know, we can choose the things that we want, and we in that choosing we get the fruit of that choice too. But just because we make a choice and we might have the fruit of that choice, it doesn't mean we have to keep choosing that, right? We can change those things if and when we want to. A key to doing that, though, is to acknowledge that I did the choosing, I did the creating, nothing outside of me did it. So if I did it, I can redo it.
Right. And you can have the fruit of the new choice.
Yes. Yes. And the funny thing, if I keep choosing the old choice, that means I keep choosing the fruit of that choice too. You know, looking back, my choice to stay in that relationship 20 years, it meant that I got the results of that choice during that time.
Right.
And when I made a choice that it was okay for me to make a new choice, I started getting the fruit of that.
Mm.
So you're exactly right.
Yeah.
But sometimes we were taught, at least I was, that once you make a choice, you can't change that choice. You suffer through that choice. Or I was taught, you know, the creator gave me that choice or guided me into that choice so that I could learn something.
Right.
Um, I think I can learn something after making a choice. I don't believe I subscribe that the creator is orchestrating that.
Right.
I think whatever I think and I'm creating might bring about some learning,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? In the creator answering or the universe conspiring on my behalf to bring me, which the Jesus said a God, right? Jesus said I was a God to bring me that thing. I may be learning something in it, and I learn, oh, that's not really what I want. That's not what I want to experience. That's not what I want to see come into my life. Let me make another choice. So that was one.
Yeah. Will you speak to one, coming to love yourself and coming to, not that you didn't before, but
Mhm.
just the um the love of yourself to be in that space, and also to not be so hard on yourself for the choices that you made.
Right, exactly. And that's a perfect segue into the second truth that I learned. I said there were two golden truths that emerged to me as I was looking back. on my marital relationships and kind of the state that I was in and different things like that. The first one was, if I did it, I can undo it. The second one was to love me first before I am able to love somebody else. So, and a lot of times we kind of overrun that teaching of, love others as you love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, that means you have to love yourself, or however you're loving yourself is the only way that you can love your neighbor, because it does start with you. So I found that the more kindness and compassion and patience and other eternal feminine traits like that I showed to myself, the more I was able to extend those to other people.
Mhm.
The more I showed that to myself, the more I could be okay with me and my choices. The more that I could own my journey and the choices that I make along my journey with compassion and thoughtfulness and intuition and all those things. And then the more I could do it to somebody else. And it was like a recycling upward spiral that made it very much okay for me to love me.
Mhm.
Because maybe, and this may just be my journey, but somewhere in my journey, self-love was equaling selfishness, but it does
Mm.
not.
No, it
Those are
doesn't.
not the same
I
thing.
could see where that would be the case because so often we might say that person is self-centered or arrogant or only thinks about themselves, and that's not what this is.
That's not what this is.
Mm-mm.
Because if I can see myself as most highly value of love, how can I see you any other way?
Yes.
But if I can't see myself as worthy of love, I really can't see you that way. Even though I may behave to you in a nice way, it's really not love, it's something else.
Right,
That we call it love or
right.
we might call it those things. That if I can't do it to myself, I can't do it to anybody else.
Because if we come to love ourselves, then we have a deep understanding. And we don't
Yes.
have that understanding if we're shut down and we don't love ourselves and we're not extending the grace. If we have grace for ourselves, then we can have that for somebody else. But
Yes.
if we're not giving somebody else grace, we sure not giving it to ourselves. We may be
Yeah.
self-centered, but we're full of judgment and
Right.
a lot of stuff.
Right, right, right. And I had to shed a lot of those things because I might have been, kind to other people, but it wasn't true kindness. It might have been my doing something to make myself feel a certain way.
'Cause you thought
Mm,
this is what I'm supposed to
This what I'm,
do or
yeah, this is what I'm
yeah,
supposed to do, or it looks good, or all of those things.
yeah,
But I really did find true love for myself, and it blossomed into
yeah,
other
yeah.
all around. It just spreads out. Yeah.
Wow, so, one, I think you're such a blessing, and
Mm.
I'm sorry to
Well,
say that.
ditto back at you.
I just feel it, I feel it, you are for myself, the things you are saying are so deep and wise and true,
Mm,
and I know that there's people who could be listening to you and will be listening to you, and you're really touching them. You're touching on what they're experiencing in their life, in their different walks of life.
mhm. I
And
hope so. And for them to love themselves wherever they are, to not, because you can do that. You can be in a situation and tank whatever is happening in your life. You can still choose to love yourself until that situation starts to change to how you want it to be.
right, right, right.
Mhm.
And so I wanna ask you some spiritual questions that I like to ask guests, and,
Okay.
one of them is your at this point, how would you describe your relationship with God? Uh,
Mhm.
your your spirituality right now.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I feel like I am what the biblical Yeshua or Jesus or whatever you want to call that person said, and that is that I am one with the Creator God, the in source, the highest power, the eternal source, the highest power. I believe that I am one with that energy. And to me, it is my being an individualized expression of Creator God, unique but not special. I believe we all are, that the Creator is in us. I'm not sure who started this analogy, but the Creator is the ocean and we are thimbles of the ocean, the exact same energy. So now is how do I express that every day? How do I express that immense power every day?
Mm.
What do I do with it? How do I make my, you know, square of space better, so that I'm better and maybe the people around me are better, or maybe they feel better if I'm around.
Yeah.
you know,
You
but
believe in serving others.
serve myself so that I can serve others as an expression of the Creator, an
Yeah.
expression of pure love. That's my goal. That's my aim. That's my intent every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I truly believe we're here to serve each other.
Mm.
I really do. Is
Hmm.
there uh, a time when you really feel the presence of God around you, in you?
Yeah, through me, as me. Most often when I sit still, I do meditate, sit still. Sometimes when I'm walking, I like to move my body, um, and I like walks in the park or whatever alone. And it's kind of like a communal time, just that I can kind of shed a lot of the sensory things and just be kind of one with that entity. Sometimes when I'm walking, I look up at the sky and it's the bluest blue of blues. And I can feel that energy more.
Yeah.
I don't ever feel that I'm never without it. I think it's an ever presence. So if I don't quite, feel it as you're saying, it's because I'm busy writing or doing something else or laundry or I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I know that it's always there.
Yeah.
And I also know it hears me whenever I think.
Yeah.
So for myself, every thought is a prayer. So it guides me
Mhm.
on my thinking. It helps me to guard my heart. It helps me to guard what I let sit in my thoughts, because I believe it that energy serves us, like you said, so we can serve others, and waiting for
Yeah.
us to say whatever's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, the lessons of Yeshua or Jesus, whoever, was exempling that very same thing.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
what we got out of it from the people who taught it to us was more what you can't do and how you're not that, and only that person can do this. But when Yeshua spoke to the olive tree, I think, no, the fig tree, and say, "Hey, you're done. Don't bear anymore," it stopped. I don't think that was a unique thing. I don't think he was saying I alone can do this.
Exactly. Exactly. And, I was just thinking as you were talking, because I mentioned I grew up Catholic and I've always felt very, very close to Jesus. And
Hmm.
my spiritual study, I study A Course in Miracles.
Yes, I
Yeah.
know that. I
Yes.
know that
Yes.
book. Yeah.
Yes. And so
Hmm.
it's been an evolution for me, Jesus in A Course in Miracles, according to A Course
Hmm.
in Miracles, because it's different from the Catholic Church or traditional
Hmm.
Christianity, but it's
Hmm.
greater to me. It's like it's more expansive.
Hmm.
The Jesus that I feel you're talking about, and the way that I see Jesus now, it's really that we're the same. It's just that Jesus, what he believed and knew who he was, like,
Right.
that's all he knew.
Right. Right. It wasn't a doubt in his
Right.
mind that
So
these things could be.
right.
We
Right.
have the doubt and the not sure and the thing. from what we were taught coming up, and it takes a lot
Undo that.
to undo that, yeah, and to allow the possibility that I can be that same thing, which he said we could be and more.
Right. Exactly. Because sometimes I'll see things in A Course in Miracles and I'm like, this is actually in the Bible, but we interpret it differently.
Yes, yes,
Yeah. Like the
yes,
same words.
yes. The same words, the
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. A Course in Miracle, a Return to Love. Oh,
Yes.
just it's awesome. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
So, uh, is there in your experiences throughout your life a time when you experienced a miracle or a blessing and it was completely God and you knew like I had nothing to do with this?
Yeah. There have been many.
Is there one you can share or willing
Yeah,
to share?
almost too many to number, and looking back at those too, I kind of think of them as fruit of faith, whether it was my own or my parents or my ancestors' faith that did these things. But oh my goodness, one is I was just in Atlanta, coming back from a business meeting, getting off of 85 South. It's a major highway, and going onto this Spring Street exit. This is probably 25, 30 years ago. And there were two lights, traffic lights, right there together. Only a Spring Street was separating them. I come off that exit. I'm looking at the second light, not looking at the first, and run that light into like 4 lanes of oncoming traffic. And the reason why I didn't see the track, there was a big wall right at that first light. I couldn't even see the traffic. But when I got out on that street, there were trucks and cars and everything. And thank the creator, nobody got hurt. I probably should have been killed or could have killed somebody else. Nobody was hurt. The only thing, I tapped the end of a motorcycle, it tripped, but the guy was fine. I mean, that was an incredible experience of what could have happened but didn't happen.
Right. Right.
And that I probably attributed to my ancestors and the prayers and the faith they had
Mhm.
of what might would be in
Right.
a situation like that. I'm not sure.
Wow.
But I got pregnant and birthed a child at 40. That was a one. I took custody of my daughter by adoption in Ethiopia. That was one. I mean, it just, the list goes on
Amazing.
about
Amazing.
what has happened.
What is your sign, your astrological sign?
Pisces,
Are you really?
I am.
Oh, that's awesome.
I
That's
am.
awesome.
Does that mean anything? Because I hadn't gotten into astrology or numerology or things like that. Although some people I listen to or talk to, they will say things. So I don't understand that,
Yeah.
but I'm thinking something.
Yes.
I
Well,
mean,
I'm no expert by any
mm-hmm,
means. I definitely feel like everything is connected to God, that everything is
mm-hmm,
energy.
yes,
And I do know in astrology where we were born and the time of day that we were born, like where is in what city, and the
mm-hmm,
time of day is tied to the moon.
yeah,
And I find that very fascinating.
mm,
Just the that was very, confirming to me
mm-hmm,
about how energy is real because for me, the moon affects the tide of the ocean. So
yes,
there's no denying that,
no denying it.
energy is powerful and
Yeah,
exists.
yeah,
And so
yes.
where we were, the time we were born and all of that,
Yes,
that
yes, yes,
has a role in how we are as human beings.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. In the period of the book, those elements come into play. Their acknowledgement of the moon in part of their worship and service, and they're just acknowledging that those periods of time, set times in their culture. And
Mhm.
so the moon was important,
Mhm.
the Sabbath, sundown was important,
Yeah.
and astrology. It
Yes.
shows up in the book. So
Yes.
even though I'm not that attuned to it, I do know that in that era of time,
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
even later than the period that my book is when Jesus was born. The Magi, that was
Mhm.
their knowledge of the stars, their
Yes.
knowledge of the universe. So there is a connection there.
Yeah,
So
and the sun, I left that part out too.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So did you feel when you were writing the book sometimes that God, the creator, was writing through you, like something was coming through you at
I
different
do think
moments?
so. Yeah, I do think so because I did learn to quiet myself and to hear, to listen. And I could hear the characters speaking to me, and I start to learn that, oh, okay, no, she wouldn't say that, or he wouldn't do that, or that wouldn't happen, or that wouldn't happen, or that this how that would happen.
Yeah,
So I think that was important for me to just kind of sit and let it start. I started the book, but then to let the characters and the energy of what was happening there to kind of guide
right,
how it
right.
how it worked. So whether it was creator God directly, I'm not sure, but it was certainly my desire to try to tell an authentic story that
Yeah,
I think allowed those things to come to me.
right,
And
right.
my willingness to allow that and not have to dictate it be one way or another.
And
So,
so when your book comes out October 24th,
mhm.
correct? So when your book comes out, so can it be pre-ordered now? What happens? How are you gonna celebrate and promote this?
Yeah, yeah, it's
Getting it
gonna be a
out
lot of
there?
that, I hope. I plan for. So we will pre-ordering will start early September and go on for about 4 weeks. It'll be on Amazon and through bookstores and different type of things. We'll have a lunch party and hope to have several events at bookstores to just celebrate it coming to life. And I love to be within communities. I love to reach out to book clubs and just have events with them and share kind of the journey of reading the story.
Yeah.
So I welcome bookstores and book clubs and any ideas for celebrations.
And you're a beautiful writer, what I've been able to read so far, just a really beautiful writer. And you work for publications? I saw you wrote features and news stories. And where did you work?
Sure, sure. So I got a journalism and MBA training, and I got a corporate job, and I was there for 7 years. And I went out on my own to do corporate consulting to do that. But also, I started a magazine called Say Amen. It was
Oh,
a Christian magazine, a Christian quarterly, back in '95 is when I
wow.
launched that and had it for 5 years when I realized I was pregnant with a real human. And I said, well, one of these babies is gonna not survive. It was a lot of hard work as print. It was
Mhm.
a lot of hard work. So I said, let me sell the assets of the magazine and parent this baby. So that's what I did. But I continued to consult with corporations as I was doing that. So I would ghostwrite for executives
Mm.
and do things like that.
In different industries or in one particular industry?
Different industries, telecommunications, banking, entertainment, different. I guess I had about 15 clients, some small, some large. And that started to wind down when my dad got ill, and I went to help him
Mhm.
um, in his illness. And it was difficult to do both. So I just decided to help him.
And at what point I may have asked you this already, but when did you decide you were gonna write this book?
It kind of started maybe about 6 years ago. 6, 7 years ago. I always wanted to do a book, and I started probably 5 of them, but it just never did go far. And I
Yeah.
think because I was reaching outside of my own story, I guess I wasn't ready to put myself in the story. So I
Yeah.
was just reaching out to something that I thought would make a good story, and it just didn't go far. Although I still have some of that work that I might go back to. But this was when I was kind of stewing in my own demise of my marriage, that I thought, again, how does this happen to in smart, intelligent women? And I learned it happens often. It happens a lot. Unfortunately, a lot of my friends and family, they went through divorces and things like that too. And nobody gets married wanting to go, wanting to divorce, but there are reasons why we get into them. The reason why they happen.
Yeah.
So that became something more of a truth to
Hmm.
tell a story, and I just wanted to tell it through a fictionalized account.
Right.
So
Right.
let me go to Abigail and tell her story and
Beautiful.
weave some of these other things through it. And, hopefully it'll heighten our senses a little bit to the things we join ourselves to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
The
think
things,
that so many people think that, you're raising a family and you have these obligations and you come last. And
yeah.
as you said, that's not the answer.
Yes.
That's a natural thing, especially if we were raised that way, and then
Yes.
our own internal guilt
Yes.
about this has to be done, this has to be done.
Yes.
No time for me.
Right. Right. And Black women are very good at that, you know, almost to a fault. And our ancestral mothers were good at it, that we could stand and hold these things together, but we do lose us.
Yeah.
There's a possibility of losing us in the process,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
we don't want to do that. And then you have to count, what's the reason I'm doing this? and
Mhm.
I and I can share with you that I was holding on to that marriage for that. They had the two kids, and can't do this. And some of my friends, from especially earlier times, would say, "Oh, there are a lot of couples living in separate bedrooms and doing these things. So just deal with it, and it's okay." And I'm thinking, "Wow, is this really really what we're saying here?" And my son, who's a free spirit, he came to me one day and was like, "Why don't you get divorced?" And I was like, "Well, I have to think about you and your sister, and divorce is not in my DNA, and I have to do it." He's like, "Well, is unhappiness in your DNA?" I'm like, oh, wow. But that's something we have to be cognizant of. The young people are watching.
Absolutely, they are.
They are listening, they're seeing, but yet they're also a little bit freer to do what internally guides them forward
Yeah.
versus what external world tells you you should be
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah. Wow, so
So,
much I could say about that, and
yeah, I bet it's
for
another,
another conversation,
another conversation.
because there's more I do wanna talk to you about. Um, what I wanna ask you, so how can people reach you, and how can they pre-order the book?
Okay. All right. So I am at nettafei.com is my website. I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Netta Fei. And I would love for people to follow me on social media. So then that they'll get the announcements of when the pre-ordering comes, when the book officially launches, different type of things about my journey, and our discussions about the eternal feminine and how that
Mhm.
raised that how that
Mhm.
hopefully we can interject more of her into our being.
Yeah. And, just one last word, if you could just speak on just believing, in you, like, you wrote this book, you know, you got this award before the book is even published,
Mm,
right? And
yeah.
just, some people just think they don't have it in them, or it's too late. I hear that. I don't hear that with my projects, but
Hmm.
some people will say like, "Well, why are you doing this? And what is that for?" And and I just have to
Girl.
be like, "Well, that they just don't understand."
Yeah.
But you have to believe in what you
Girl. You do. If you don't, who will? And it's never too late to give up on any dream. So dream, I mean, dream and visions is what moves us forward, what energizes us. That's part of our being.
Yes.
And you you have to believe in yourself and want for yourself, desire things for yourself, and know that it's never too late. Live your life from inside out.
Absolutely.
Right. And it's
Yes.
great that we have all this access to information and stuff. And like your podcast is so informative, it's encouraged. That's a beautiful thing. And we need that. But it can't just be from the outside in.
Mm-mm.
It has to be from the inside out.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so excited. I hope we can do it again.
Oh, I would love for you to come
Chatting
back.
with your girlfriend.
Yes. Yes, yes,
Yes, I
yes.
love your podcast. Let's Start Healing. And you know what? I'm going to plant the seed for Let's Start Healing live in person.
Yes, in a studio.
Yeah. Or in a conference room where we can get like 50 of us there, eating and drinking good food and having these chats and and building one another up. So we are healed. We can live healed.
That's what it's about. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Remember, you can listen to Let's Start Healing wherever you get your podcasts. That includes Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Please share Let's Start Healing with at least one person that you know. Until next time, let's start healing.